tells the dark moments in human history. In 1999 in Japan, control was lost without any alarm sounding, and no one noticed. In 1999, in a small town in Japan, an ordinary workday began just like any other. The workers at a nuclear fuel processing facility in Tokaimura arrived for their morning shift without knowing that before the day was over, control would be lost in an irreversible way. No sirens sounded. There were no explosions. There was no immediate sense of danger, and that was exactly what made it so deadly. The Tokaimura nuclear accident. Lost facts. Japan was known for its discipline, precision, and strict procedures. This belief was felt most strongly in the nuclear industry. On paper, everything was regulated. Every step had a rule. Every risk had a protocol. But Tokaimura was not a large nuclear power plant. It was a smaller fuel processing facility with less oversight and less control. Over time, written rules turned into daily habits. Speed took priority over safety. That day, 3 workers were on duty at the facility. Their task was something they had done many times before, preparing a uranium fuel solution. According to official procedures, this process should have been carried out using automated systems to prevent critical errors. But those systems were slow, so they used metal buckets. They mixed the uranium by hand. This method was illegal, but it had been practiced for years. And when something starts to feel normal, it no longer feels dangerous. On the day everything changed, too much uranium solution was prepared, and it was poured into the wrong container. That container had a critical limit that should never have been exceeded, but the amount was not calculated correctly. Then a brief blue light appeared. The alarms did not sound. No warning system was active. The workers were unaware, but a nuclear chain reaction had begun, and once it started, there was no way to stop it. This blue light was not an explosion. There was no sound. It was the silent sign that a system had passed beyond human control. The workers continued working. They were not trained to recognize the danger of this situation. Radiation has no smell, no color, no sound, and therefore offers no reason to run. A slow and unnoticeable collapse. As the hours passed, the workers began to feel unwell. One said he felt dizzy. Another experienced nausea. Standing became difficult. The symptoms appeared gradually. No one connected them to radiation. Meanwhile, radiation levels outside the facility continued to rise. Nearby homes were not evacuated. No warning was given to the public. Even the authorities were struggling to understand what was happening. And during this delay, control slipped not only from the workers' hands, but from the entire system. Hours later, the seriousness of the situation was fully realized. The area was sealed off, the workers were taken to the hospital, but the damage had already been done. This was not a sudden disaster. It was the result of small decisions repeated over many years. 2 workers eventually died due to radiation exposure, and no intervention, no law, no apology could bring them back. Aftermath and the truth that remained. The Tokaimura accident forced Japan to change its nuclear safety laws. Regulations were tightened. Inspections were increased, but for those who lost their lives, control never returned. No one thought they were doing something dangerous. Tokaimura showed the world an unsettling truth. Disasters do not always arrive with chaos. The part no one wanted to talk about was what happened after the accident. It remains one of the most disturbing aspects of Tokaimura, the human cost of Tokaimura. Hisashi Aochi was 35 years old. He received the highest dose in the accident. His body absorbed a level of radiation that a human body cannot survive. The injured worker did not die quickly, and he was not allowed to die. Aochi was admitted to a special hospital. His immune system had completely collapsed. His body could no longer regenerate. It had lost the ability to heal. His condition worsened with each passing day. The doctors knew this from the very beginning, and they knew there was no cure. Despite this, treatment continued, not to save him, but to observe him. And this was essentially torture. The 3 atomic bomb victims were first taken to the nearby National Mito Hospital, then covered with thick plastic sheets by officials wearing protective suits and masks, and transported by helicopter to the Chiba Prefectural Institute of Radiation and Medical Science. Reporters and witnesses reportedly wondered, why are they transporting someone who appears healthy wrapped in plastic like that? At first, even the doctors and nurses in charge were surprised to see how well Uchi looked when he arrived at the emergency room. He was the calmest of the 3 workers. Unlike Shinohara, who lost consciousness during the accident, Uchi could walk without any loss of consciousness in the hospital and appeared quite strong. In addition, since the accident did not cause an explosion, Uchi had not inhaled or come into contact with radioactive dust, and his body was not emitting radioactive material. The first noticeable thing about Uchi was that only the uranium solution had spilled. Therefore, his arms and salivary glands, the most exposed areas, were red and swollen. According to the medical team, Uchi was mentally calm. However, Hisashi Uchi's chromosomes were so severely fragmented that this condition had never been known before. It was seen for the first time. As soon as the chromosomes could no longer withstand the enormous volume of radiation, they instantly broke apart at 18 sieverts. On October 5th, the 6th day after exposure, when doctors looked at the micrograph of the bone marrow cells collected from Uchi, they could not believe their eyes. The chromosomes in the magnified bone marrow cells should have been visible. Instead, what appeared in the image was scattered black dark matter. Its shape was completely different from any human chromosomes they had ever seen. Normally consisting of 23 pairs, some of the chromosomes appeared cut and stuck to other chromosomes. The disintegration of chromosomes meant that no new cells could be formed in the future. Scratched and damaged chromosomes could never be treated until a complete genetic restoration technology was developed. This meant that modern medicine could not treat acute radiation exposure, and those exposed to radiation at this level would only be able to sustain a painful life through life support treatment. Ouchi had to be hospitalized in a sterilization room because his white blood cells had disappeared and his immunity was completely gone. Since his cells could no longer regenerate, his body began to peel due to self-destruction. His nails fell off. These effects progressed sequentially, starting from his right hand, which had been exposed to the most radiation. As the epidermis that covered and protected his body disappeared, he gradually suffered severe pain. Ouchi's scream-filled monologues, which exceeded the limits of his endurance, were recorded in medical records at the point where the skin began to peel as medical tape and equipment were removed. Just reading these records makes you feel the patient's extreme pain. A notebook titled "Record of 83 Days of Radiation Exposure Treatment" was written. In it, Ouchi's words were recorded: "Please stop. I'm going home. Mom, I am not a guinea pig." In early October, he began to experience hallucinations such as, "There is a snake on my leg," and "We are in a truck." He said strange things. He also showed seizure-like symptoms, such as constantly moving his body. His body began to rot, and his eyes started bleeding. Although he looked fine from the outside, it was as if his entire body had been shattered from head to toe. Ouchi's DNA was completely damaged. 63 days after exposure, his hematopoietic stem cell transplant was successful, but due to his weakened immune system, even his white blood cells showed severe disease symptoms. Sedatives and painkillers were administered, skin grafts were performed, but his body continued to peel. Ouchi was in critical condition. On the 59th day, he suffered cardiac arrest and was resuscitated 3 times. On the night of December 19, after 81 days, a doctor barely said this: "When Uchi-san's heart stops again, it would be better not to bring him back." His family agreed. Ouchi survived for 83 days. Ultimately, Mr. Ouchi became the first victim of a nuclear accident that occurred following Japan's aggressive nuclear energy expansion plan. On December 26, a memorial ceremony was held. In Shibuya, people marched shouting, "Remember the death of Mr. Hisashi Ouchi." Some disasters do not happen all at once. In Tokaimura, death advanced quietly. Days passed, bodies collapsed, but the process was not stopped. This is not a story of an explosion. It is the story of a chain that was not stopped when it still could have been. For more real stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.